Okay, just now kita dah tengok macam mana kita boleh measure the relationship between two variable, dependent and independent variable, by visualize the data in the graph, okay, that we call as a scatter plot. Now we want to see about the correlation. Okay, so correlation analysis is used to measure the strength of the relationship between two variable. Okay, so katakanlah kita ada dua variable, dependent and independent variables. Okay, when we plot our both variables, we can see is either the variable have a strong or perfect positive relation correlation, or perfect negative correlation, or is have a positive correlation or negative correlation. It might also have no correlation at all, or we also can see either our data will have a curvilinear correlation. Okay, but then how strong the correlation is, sekuat mana correlation tu. Kalau kita kata dia adalah perfect positive correlation, sekuat mana positive correlation tu, sekuat mana tu maksudnya adakah sejauh mana independent variable ni akan affect the dependent variable, sejauh mana perubahan independent variable ni akan memberi kesan kepada dependent variable. Okay, maksudnya sekuat mana the relationship, so we can measure it through the correlation analysis. Okay, so correlation coefficient, we have one correlation coefficient which is symbolized as R. Okay, R ni adalah correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficient ni is used to measure of how closely related two data series are. Okay, so kita akan measure the value of R to visualize how close both of the data is. Maksudnya kalau dia relate, sejauh mana dia berkaitan di antara satu sama lain. Okay, in particular, the correlation coefficient measures the direction and extent of linear association between two variables. Okay, so R also measures the direction and extent of linear association between two variables. Maksudnya hubungan lah antara dua variable ni. Pearson correlation coefficient R tell us two aspects of the relationship between two variables. Okay, so we have one correlation coefficient that we call as a Pearson correlation coefficient, which is R just now. It tells us two aspects of the relationship between two variables. The sign negative or positive for R identities the kind of relationship between two quantitative variables, because maksudnya bila kita measure R nanti, bila kita kira R nanti, negative and positive of the R membawa maksud kepada relationship between the variables. Okay, so the magnitude of R describe the strength of the relationship. So we can find the value of R, okay, by using the formula here. The R is a Pearson correlation coefficient, so we will only measure the R, which is a Pearson correlation coefficient, in order for us to measure the strength of the relationship between two variables. And then the magnitude of R, magnitude ni adalah modulus of R lah. Okay, the magnitude of R describe the strength of the relationship. Okay, magnitude of R describe sejauh mana, sekuat mana dia hubungan antara dua variable tu. So how can we find the value of Pearson correlation coefficient R is by using this formula, where the first one we have the summation of X and Y. You need to know that X is for independent variable and Y is the dependent variable. So we will multiply the dependent variable and independent variable. So the summation of all dependent multiplied by independent variable is here. Okay, minus with the summation of X multiplied by the summation of Y divided by number of data N. Okay, divide by the square root of summation of X square minus summation of X power of 2 divided by N, multiplied by the summation of Y square minus summation of Y power of 2 divided by N. So this one is the formula to find the Pearson correlation coefficient R, where N is a number of pair observation, maksudnya bilangan data lah. Okay, so contohnya kalau macam bilangan data X ada 30, Y pun akan ada 30 lah, because dia berkaitan dengan satu sama lain. So N kita adalah 30, the number of pair. X is independent variable and Y is always the dependent variable. Okay, so the magnitude of the correlation lies between negative 1.0 and 1.0. So magnitude correlation ni dia antara negative 1.0 sehingga ke 1.0. Okay, so how can we describe on the strength of the relationship on or correlation between the variable is depends on the value of R. Kalau kita dapat nilai R equal to 1, it means that we have a perfect positive relationship. Perfect positive relationship. Okay, if we have R is in between 0.8 to 1, we have a strong positive relationship. Okay, if we have R in between 0.5 to 0.8, we have moderate positive relationship. Okay, if we have R between 0 to 0.5, we have weak positive relationship. If we have R equal to 0, means we have no relationship. Okay, so the value of R is lies in between of negative 1 to 1. Here we have 0. Okay, if we have 0, R equal to 0 means we have no relationship between X and Y. There is no relationship or no correlation between X and Y. Okay, if we have the value of R is in between 0 to 0.5, okay, 0.0 to 0.5 here means we have weak correlation. If we have R is between 0.5 to 0.8, let's say 0.8 here, we have a moderate. Okay, while if we have the value of R is in between 0.8 to 1, we have a strong. And if we have the value of R is equal to 1, we have a perfect, strong, perfect positive relationship. Otherwise, if you have the value of R less than 0, okay, but it's in between negative 0.5 to 0 is here, 0.5 to 0, so means here you have a weak negative relationship. If you have the value of R is in between 0.8 to 0.5, here you have a moderate. If you have the value of R is in between negative 0.8 to negative 1, here you have a strong negative relationship. And if you have R is equal to negative 1, means you have a perfect negative relationship between your variable X and Y. Okay, so the value of Pearson correlation coefficient R will tells you the strength of the correlation between the dependent variable and also the independent variable. Okay, the value of correlation is helpful in determining the magnitude of the relationship between variables. Okay, so nilai correlation ni sangat membantu untuk kita cari magnitude of the relationship. Okay, the strength of the relationship antara dua variables. Okay, the positive value depicts direct relationship between variables, sebab the negative value hold indirect relationship between the variable. Maksudnya kalau positive value kita nampak dia adalah positive relationship, macam saya cakap tadi lah, semakin banyak, contohnya semakin naik variable X, semakin naik juga variable Y. But if we have the negative value, is dia menunjukkan the negative relationship, maksudnya dia vice versa. Variable X semakin naik, variable Y semakin menurun. Variable X semakin menurun, variable Y semakin menaik. So itu adalah negative relationship. But then it still have relationship between the variable. Walaupun dia negatif, tapi dia masih wujudnya relationship. Unless you have the value of R is equal to 0, means there is no correlation or there is no relationship between the dependent variable and also independent variable. Okay, let's see one example here. Draw a scatter diagram and compute the value of the correlation coefficient for the data obtained in the study of the number of absence and the final grade of the 7 students in the statistic class. Okay, so you have 7 statistic students. Okay, in one class you take 7 statistics students and you take the data of the number of absence, berapa banyak hari diorang tak datang ke kelas, dan the final grade, markah akhir diorang dalam statistik. Kita nak tengok hubungan, adakah bilangan dia tak hadir ke kelas memainkan peranan ataupun memberi kesan kepada markah dia dalam statistik. Adakah markah dia dalam statistik ini terkesan dengan berapa bilangan dia tak datang kelas. So kita nak check either is exist or not. Okay, so apa yang kita buat, kita plot the scatter plot. Okay, so you see the first student A, number of absent is 6, Ingat, independent variable will be at the part CY, at the part CX, x-axis, and the number of dependent variable is in y-axis. So dalam kes kita, independent variable is number of absent, berapa bilangan hari dia tak hadir ke kelas, dan dependent variable maksudnya pemboleh ubah ataupun variable yang bertindak balas adalah markah final dia. Maksudnya markah final ni kita nak tengok adakah dia berkaitan ataupun bertindak balas ke atas bilangan tidak hadir ke kelas. Adakah bilangan tak hadir kelas memberi kesan kepada markah final. Okay, so markah final akan duduk dekat Y dan number of absent akan duduk dekat X. Okay, see for the first student, number of absent is 6, final grade is 82. So you can see, you tengok dekat mana part CX 6 tapi part CY dia adalah 82. Okay, so you see part CX is 6 here. Okay, and the part CY is 82. Kita agak-agak kat sini. So this one is the A. Okay, the A means the student A. We plot for student A here. Okay, and then number of absent is 2, markah 86. So nak plot, kita carilah X2, Y86 kat mana. So X2 is here. This is X2, Y86 kita agak-agak dekat sini. Okay, so this one is for the student B. Okay, for the student B. And then for student C, number of absent is 15, markah 43. So number of absent is 15. Okay, number of absent is 15. 15 is here, let's say. Markah adalah 43. So markah 43 katakanlah dekat sini. Okay, katakanlah kat sini. So this one is for student C. So you boleh teruskanlah plot sampailah you dapat the whole things. Maksudnya you plot the whole markah and the whole number of absent day. Okay, so you can see the pattern of the scatter plot. Okay, so kalau awak nampak kat sini, pattern of the scatter plot ni dia menurun. Okay, pattern of the scatter plot ni dia menurun. Okay, so bila dia menurun, we can say that this one is the negative relationship. It's negative relationship. Maksudnya semakin bertambah bilangan hari absent, okay, semakin bertambah bilangan hari absent, semakin bertambah bilangan hari absent, final grade semakin menurun. Okay, so this one is called as a negative relationship. We can see that this one is negative relationship because awak dapat dia punya garis macam ni. Okay, tapi ini bukan garis lurus. So it's not perfect negative relationship. So now we want to measure how strength, the kekuatan negative relationship ni. So macam mana kita nak measure kekuatan negative relationship? From scatter plot, we only can determine whether the variable have a relationship or not. Okay, daripada scatter plot, kita hanya dapat pastikan ataupun tengok sama ada dua-dua variable ni berkaitan antara satu sama lain ataupun tidak. Tapi kita tak boleh measure how strength, berapa kekuatan kedua-dua variable ni, how strong the relationship, berapa kekuatan kedua-dua, berapa kekuatan hubungan di antara kedua-dua ni kita tak boleh measure. Okay, so how to measure the strength of the relationship is between by using the R, the Pearson correlation coefficient, which is R. So we need to measure the value of R. We need to know what is the value of R. So nak cari nilai R, kita akan gunakan formula. So before that, from the scatter diagram, it shows that there exists a negative linear relationship. So kita tahu sebab kita nampak dia punya garisan ke bawah. So it's negative relationship between the number of absence and the final grade of the 7 student in the statistical class. However, is it weak, moderate or strong? Dia negative, but then is it weak, moderate or strong negative relationship? So kita tak tahu. Macam mana kita nak tahu? Kita hanya boleh ukur dengan mencari the value of R, Pearson coefficient, correlation coefficient. Okay, we can calculate the correlation coefficient to identify the strength of the relationship between the two variables. Okay, so kita cari correlation coefficient R. So nak cari correlation coefficient R, kita akan gunakan formula. So this is the formula. Okay, so awak kena cari dulu X darab dengan Y. So maksudnya kalau X darab dengan Y, this one is your X, this one is your Y. Darab lah 6 darab dengan 82. So you will get X darab Y here. 2 darab dengan 86, you will get X darab Y. 15 darab dengan 43, so you will get X darab Y. Okay, and then X kuasa 2, so X adalah this one, Y adalah this one, so 6 kuasa 2, 36, 82 kuasa 2, you have this one. Okay, and at the end, awak akan dapat summation of Y, this one is summation of XY, this one is summation of X square, this one is summation of Y square. You just need to masukkan dalam formula dan you will get the value of R. So kalau awak tengok dekat sini, value of R is negative 0.94. Okay, ingat tadi R lies in between the value of negative 1, 0 to 1. Okay, so kalau the value of R is in between 0 to negative 0.5, you have weak. Between negative 0.5 to negative 0.8, you have moderate. Between negative 0.8 to negative 1, you have strong. And if you have exactly negative 1, you have exactly negative 1, you will have the perfect negative relationship. So now the value is negative 0.9442, so means that you have strong negative relationship. Okay, so because of the value of R is negative 0.9442, you have a strong negative relationship between a student's final grade and the number of absent student. Okay, means that semakin banyak dia punya hari dia absent, markah dia akan semakin rendah. Okay, you have strong relationship. So in a correlation analysis, we actually measuring the relationship between two variable, which is dependent variable and independent variable. Okay, so the first thing, how to measure the relationship between these two variable is by plotting the graph that you call as a scatter plot. Okay, by plotting the graph that you call as a scatter plot, from the graph we can see, from the visual we can see what is the relationship between two variable. We can see secara kasar. Okay, adakah dia negative relationship atau dia positive relationship atau dia no relationship at all. So kita boleh tengok daripada scatter plot. But then dia tak cukup. Kerana scatter plot tak boleh bagi tahu kita berapa kekuatan ataupun berapa close-nya relationship between the variable. Dia boleh bagi tahu kita is either no relationship, is either positive relationship. Positive relationship maksudnya bila independent variable semakin menaik, dependent variable pun akan semakin menaik. But if negative relationship, bila independent variable semakin menaik, dependent variable semakin menurun. This one is positive, this one is negative relationship. But then scatter plot cannot tell us how is the strength of these two relationship. So macam mana kita nak cari berapa kekuatan relationship ni, sama ada positive or negative, is by finding the value of Pearson correlation coefficient, which is R, by using the formula. Okay, and you will have the status of the relationship that lies between negative 1 to 1. If you have the value of R is between 0 to 0.5, means you have weak, positive. If you have 0.5 until 0.8, means you have moderate, positive. If you have the value of R is in between 0.8 to 1, you will have strong, positive. And if you have exactly the value of R is equal to 1, means you have a perfect positive relationship. Okay, means in correlation we have two important measurement. The first thing is the scatter plot to tells you the relationship between two variable, and the second thing is the Pearson correlation coefficient R, that will tells you the strength of the relationship. Okay, so it is important for you to understand how to find the correlation or the relationship between the dependent variable and independent variable. Okay.